Hello.
Hello.
How are you feeling, Carrie?
A little bit better. I had a lot of lozenges today, so I'm hoping maybe that's what helped it.
Well, I'm going to try and get through this. Breathing okay. Not in the greatest shape.
Are you sick, Miriam?
Hello?
Hi, are you sick?
Yeah, I'm really sick.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Hi, Mary.
Hi.
Oh, geez. Oops. I hope Beth remembered. I don't have my phone with me either. Jeez. Yeah. I'm gonna run upstairs and get my phone in case I need to call Beth. I'll be right back.
Jesus Christ.
Okay. I think, is that Scott? Hi, Scott.
Hey, everyone.
Okay, Beth is going to join us, so we're just going to hold on a minute. Well, I don't want to keep people, and we have a quorum. So it's 8:02. I'm going to call the meeting of the Conservation Commission. And for the record, I'm here, Miriam DeFont, Mary David, and Scott Kahn are present from the commission. So we hopefully will have a very brief meeting tonight. There's been a request made by the town to do some additional environmental testing under the existing determination, negative determination number 3, that we reached back in October. So we're just going to review that and discuss it with the library building committee. So Penny or Marianne, do you want to?
Sure. So, so back in November, on November 11th, Fuss and O'Neill did a limited subsurface investigation in the vicinity of the former Air Force radio tower. Last summer, we found reportable levels of gasoline there, and that was reported to DEP. And this past summer, so 2 summers ago, we found the initial release. This past summer, the town hired Fuss and O'Neill to review the release and make recommendations, and they recommended a subsurface investigation. So they did 7 soil borings and they put in a test well. The soil borings didn't show reportable levels of gasoline, but the groundwater in the test well did. So in response to that, Fuss and O'Neill has now recommended putting in additional test wells so that they can determine the extent and the perimeter of the release. And then this data will be reported to DEP and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. They'll be using the same geoprobe drill rig that was used in November. It's track mounted. If conditions warrant it, matting can be used like it was in November, with traveling over the areas of isolated wetlands. Then once you get beyond those, it's quite a ways back to where the tower was. So that's where we are now. There is some gasoline or chemicals commonly found in gasoline in the groundwater in one location, and that warrants further investigation on the town's part. You're muted, Miriam.
So this is in the area where borehole 9 is?
Yes, yes.
How far out from borehole 9 do you expect to go?
Well, so that monitoring well is probably 20 feet from bore 9, and then the additional wells will be 20 to 25 feet in a perimeter around that. There'll be an additional well, in each of the 4 directions, and then additional well that comes so north, closer towards Leverett Road, another 20 to 25 feet. So, so we tested last summer, we also tested the water in the well that the town installed, I think in 2014. And that water didn't have reportable levels of gasoline. So they want to do one in between, not in between, but they want to do a perimeter around that well and then an additional one, along the road, another 20 feet along the road towards in this direction, the Leverett Road direction.
Do people want me to show the map? So would it be helpful?
Yes.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, let me see if I can pull this up.
So when do you want to do this work?
It's currently scheduled for next week. So the reporting to DEP is due January 28th. And if this work is done next week, then the results should be back in time that it can be included in that report.
And I'm just curious, was the reportable level, was the detected level at a reportable level, Marianne?
Oh, yes. Yeah. In the groundwater, it was. So none of the soil borings had reportable levels, and the soil boring from the summer before, it had a reportable level, but it was just at the reportable level. So it was at 100 parts per whatever. And if it had been 99, it wouldn't have been considered a reportable level. And we don't have the report yet. The holidays have slowed things down. But we do know that we had reportable levels of chemicals commonly found in gasoline in the groundwater that was taken. And that well is 20 feet south of Bore 9, so heading away from the road.
Somewhere around in here.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, so where that black arrow is, and then Bore 9 is where, so you can't see what I'm pointing to, or I don't know, you probably can't, but
here's the air. Can you see my cursor?
yeah. So if you move your cursor towards the front of the lot, towards the Leverett Road, that second little thing is about where Bore 9 is, and then the fifth well would be where the third little thing is.
Okay.
Okay. MB, it looks like 1-1 would be the well furthest north, and then MB10 looks like it's about where Bore 9 was. So.
And I saw and it was helpful to have the scope of work that Fuss and O'Neill was proposing to the town, just to get an idea of what this was going to involve. And I had a question. It sounds like they're planning on doing the same methodology, the same approach as was used back in November. The question I had was, it said that if there were any detectable contaminants in the sediments, they would containerize it. And I guess I'm wondering, how is that going to get determined, whether the sediments would be containerized or not?
So they have, you mean on site when they're doing the testing?
Yeah.
So they bring a meter, it's PID, which can detect levels.
Papers.
And so they would use that. Of course, they don't have a laboratory on the site, but they have a meter that they use, which will help them determine that they use that meter to determine where the borings will be, and they'll use that meter to determine where these test wells will go to. I think this is a general vicinity, but it may, they're not going to move dozens or even tens of feet, but it might be, a slightly different perimeter. And so they'll use that meter to do their initial, investigation, and then they'll use it to determine whether or not the water that they remove should be removed, or if it can just be released on
And
site.
it sounds like all of this work would be done in one day is the plan.
That is the hope. They can't imagine that it wouldn't be able to be finished in one day. They said, but we anticipated that, or we had that question. So we asked, if you don't, well, so the drilling is done in one day, and then they prep the wells on another day, but that's just a person walking back there. It's not a vehicle going back. And then they come and they collect the water samples on yet a third day. But if they can't finish the drilling in one day, they would bring the drill rig out, put it out on the front of the lot, and then go back in the next day.
Mary, you've got your hand raised.
Yeah, can you tell me specifically what testing that they're going to do this time?
All the same testing as the last time. So they test for, well, actually, you know what? I'm gonna hold off. I will ask them, or I'll go back and look at the report. I don't know if they'll test for the whole range, or if they'll just do a targeted test for the things that they found the last time. I will ask them. But they're going to do whatever is recommended best practices, considering what they found the last time. But I didn't look and see. I don't remember reading if they were testing for the whole suite of things that they were testing for the last time.
Is there anybody here from Fuss and O'Neill to answer that?
No, because the testing that they're doing is not, so really the reason why we're talking to you is because we have to drive through wetlands to get to the site, but it's very expensive to have Fuss and O'Neill at these meetings, and we're really concerned about how much that is costing the town. And so since this is doing more of the same in the same location, and the testing that they're doing isn't really under the Conservation Commission's jurisdiction because it's not in a wetland, we decided that we wanted to save the cost of having them here. It's hundreds of dollars to have them to come to one of these meetings.
Just to clarify, isn't it within the 100-foot buffer zone that they agreed on in the last meeting?
It's not.
I'm not sure about that. I think that remains to be seen, because my understanding was that the buffer zone that was discussed was going to be on both the west and the eastern sides of the property. And I think that the access road is within 100 feet of the eastern property boundary. So without having those buffer zones on the map, I just looked, I did a kind of examination scaling it, and it looked like it might be within that buffer zone. So I don't think we should be assuming it's not at this point. So just to kind of review what our jurisdiction is, we're concerned about work being done in wetlands or resource areas that are either defined by the Wetlands Protection Act or the bylaw, and the 100-foot buffer zone around those areas. And we haven't finished the ANRAD process, so we haven't made a final determination about where the wetland boundaries are. But at our last ANRAD hearing, we had, in theory, agreed to a consensus line that would include the 100-foot buffer on both the eastern and the western sides of the property, because there were undelineated wetlands to the east and the west of the property. So that's kind of where our jurisdiction is. So moving heavy equipment through a buffer zone would fall within the jurisdiction of the commission. But in this case, what's being proposed is very, very similar to what we already determined was not going to have an adverse effect on wetlands back in October. I think that we could approve this administratively in this meeting if we all are in agreement that there isn't going to be an adverse effect on wetlands with this work. I think the one thing I would say as a caveat is that if there's additional testing or additional work that needs to be done in the future beyond what you're planning next week, I think we would want you to come back to us to review it. And if we feel like it's something that is similar in scope and nature to what we approved under the determination, then we would perhaps approve it administratively. But if we felt like it was substantially different, let's say you were doing a cleanup, theoretically, then we might require a new permit for that.
I did find exactly what they're testing for. Would you like me to read that?
Well, I just want to make sure that was clear.
Yes, that's very helpful.
And I think we would just want to have a confirmation from you that your contractor will be agreeing to avoid any work within wetland resource areas when they're doing this particular work, and not to stray into a resource area, perhaps unintentionally. I know that there's a contractor who's doing the drilling, so we would just want perhaps an email confirmation from Fuss and O'Neill saying that they're understanding this, and we'll
right. And I'll also be on site the whole day. So while this is happening.
So could we get an email confirmation from them just saying that they will be following the same procedures and take responsibility for
absolutely
staying out of any wetlands?
Yeah.
What I see, Don, I think you have your hand raised. Did you have a comment?
I was just hoping that at some point during this RDA hearing, that we would get to see the results of what the first boring was. But I understand it's probably a sensitive subject for the library committee to be sharing that sort of thing with the general public. What I hear is Mary Ann talking about the kinds of tests that might be done, and not really knowing exactly for sure how those tests would be done. You're the observer that's going to be on site. How would you be familiar with the testing procedure to see that the results weren't messed up again? Maybe they weren't messed up the first time. Maybe that's just what you got for background readings. To me, that seems like a question of where you do your boring holes. I'm sure that if you go far enough away from the contamination, that you'll certainly find some clean samples. I would just like to know what's being tested for, and if it's not possible for the library to share that with the general public, I sure would appreciate it if they at least shared it with the commission. You know, making RDA decisions is easy. This is in an upland area. There shouldn't be any issue about redoing the RDA, but if I was the commission, I'd be asking for those results. Thank you.
All right, thanks. Well, and I believe that as part of our original permit, there was understanding that they would provide those test results when they come available. I think our jurisdiction here, and I just want to kind of keep this kind of narrowly focused on, there's some work that's being proposed, and our job is to decide whether we think that this work is not going to have an adverse effect on the wetlands, and if so, to give the town permission to go forward with that work. We're not here to, really have input into what kind of testing you do. I don't think that it makes a difference from our perspective. If you test for one thing or another thing, it's really the work that's being done and the impact on the wetlands.
I can say what we're testing for.
Oh, okay. Sure. Go ahead.
All right. So why don't I just read it? I do, because it's a compendium of analytical methods, 14 metals by US EPA methods. extractable petroleum hydrocarbons and target compounds by mass DEP methodology, and volatile petroleum hydrocarbons and target compounds by mass DEP methodology. And you know, so you know what we think happens and what OTO thought happened when they were out working for us in the summer of 2021, and what Fuss and O'Neill thinks happens is that when the Department of Defense had an underground fuel storage tank in that location, that tank leaked. And so we're looking for the extent of that release and proof of that release for the conversations that the town is having with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers.
Okay. Scott, I see you have your hand raised.
Yeah, thank you. I don't have any concerns with the testing as proposed. I guess my question would be the timing of the testing. And I know we're going to have warmer weather coming in here and a chance of rain over the weekend. And so I think my question is more about the protecting the resource areas and the matting and the timing of this. And I guess I would say I'm comfortable with the testing proceeding as is with frozen ground conditions without matting, but if the temperature were going to be above freezing, that we would require the matting to be placed to protect the resource areas. But those are my only comments or concerns. Thank you.
Yeah, I think, thanks. I think that that's really what we need to figure out is whether we want to require the matting. I feel like if the ground is frozen, the effect on these isolated vegetated wetlands that are in the access road are going to be minimal anyway. And it's a disturbed site to begin with because it's an access road. Commissioners, what would you like to do around, first of all, do we feel like this is something we can approve under the existing determination? We in agreement about that?
So.
Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
And what about the matting?
I guess my thought is only to use it if we really have a pretty good melt and significant rain. I mean, I don't know what the weather prediction really is, but I don't think it's supposed to get above like 45 or something in the next week. So it's probably fine.
Yeah. And the ground's frozen right now. I'm not sure the matting is going to add much.
Yeah.
Personally, at this point, given that the ground is frozen. If it rains or it's above freezing, there's going to be pooling water, but I'm guessing the ground will be frozen underneath the pooling water. So what if we make the requirement that if temperatures are above freezing, that they'll use the matting and give us, as they did with the original work that was permitted, provide some photographic documentation to confirm what work is going to, that the matting was used. And is that agreeable to everybody?
Yeah.
The only other thing I would say is perhaps if there is any detectable contamination in sediments that requires containerizing, could we be provided documentation about that, photographs, and be notified about that? And we would just want the probably the contractor, to do their due diligence and not distributing sediments that could be contaminated onto the ground. If there's any contamination, because it is in the buffer zone. Is that okay?
Sounds good.
And then are we in agreement that this work is okay this time, but that if there's additional work that needs to be done, we'd like the town to come back and review it with us like they did this time?
Yes.
I think that's
okay. All right. So somebody want to make a motion? All the above.
I make a motion to this is this is just a request. This isn't an actual RDA amendment or
An idea.
anything.
So it's just
Just-
giving them permission to do this additional work under the
Under the existing.
with existing conditions, with existing special conditions, I guess.
All right, so I make a motion to approve the request to do additional work under the conditions that were approved under the original determination for the investigation work at lot 032.
Okay. And
I'll second.
okay. David,
Aye.
DeFont, I, Con,
Aye.
and Wilson.
Aye.
Okay, so I think that's all we have. You know, just, you know, provide that documentation. And I think, you know, what I would like to suggest is, if the commission agrees, that we ask Fuss and O'Neill to provide an email just attesting to their commitment to following those conditions and refraining from going into any resource areas with these test borings. Because if they were going to do test borings in a resource area, then we would want to probably review that, I think. Is that agreeable?
I have a question about that.
Yeah.
So since so resource area meaning, you know, so since the wetlands aren't delineated back there, and we don't know exactly where the line falls, and if you know, if we're going to go 25 feet out from the road in each direction, that's 25 feet east, 25 feet west. That 25 feet east might fall into the buffer zone, and it's important that a boring is done there.
Yes.
You know, it's important that a well goes there.
Well, that's why we're
Right.
wanting to review this, because it's in
Okay.
the buffer zone. That's where our
Right.
jurisdiction is. If there wasn't
Right.
any, if you, and you have to, the other piece is that in order to move this drill rig out there, you have to move through the buffer zone on the north end of the property. So, you know, whenever you're moving heavy equipment and machinery through a resource area, that's where
Right.
we would want
Right.
you to be checking in with us to see whether we felt like
Right.
a permit was
Okay.
needed.
But you understand that we have to go 25 feet east
Yes.
from, yeah, okay.
It's understood.
Alrighty. Okay.
I would say if it turned out that you needed to be doing this testing in the areas that have been delineated as a bordering vegetated wetland, like the BVW3,
Right.
then I think
Right.
we would want you to come back to us. And
Right.
as that
Right.
is-
Yes. Absolutely. Yeah, but we're not going in that direction. So
not going that
this
far
time
north.
around. Yes. Okay.
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 And so you'll have Fuss and O'Neill send us an email. Just
Yes, that will not come until next week because our project manager's on vacation, but I sent myself an email asking them to do that already. So,
Okay. That
yeah.
sounds great.
okay.
Okay. All right. So I think we're done with that. I just had a couple of quick things for the commission to consider as a chair update. And then I think we can be concluded for tonight.
Thank you, Miriam.
Thank you.
And,
Thank you.
everybody else, thank you.
So I sent everybody the invoice that we received for Beth Goodman, and I just wanted to get a motion in order to approve the payment so I can send that on. Has everybody had a chance to review it? So this was the initial invoice from Beth Goodman was just for the work she did in November initially. And it's she hasn't done the invoicing. Her firm hasn't done the invoicing for December yet.
I'll make a motion to approve payment of the invoice to Beth.
Second.
Second.
Okay, David,
Aye.
DeFont, I, Con,
Aye.
and Wilson.
Aye.
Okay, and then the only other thing I have, there's two more things. One was that there was this emergency certification for the Southbrook Conservation Area footbridge. And I just wanted to get the commission to ratify it so we can just have the final approval of it. So I sent everybody the emergency certification with the special conditions.
So I'll make a motion to accept to ratify the emergency conditions for the South Brook Bridge that was replaced.
Okay, second.
Second,
Okay, David,
Aye.
DeFont, aye, Con,
Aye.
Wilson.
aye.
And then the one more thing, and then we're absolutely done. We did not, we've lost the representative to the CPC who was representing the Conservation Commission. Linda Ava Scott was kind of filling in the role for the Concom's representative. And I agreed that I would be willing to step in at least on a temporary basis to fill that role. But I just would like to get the commission support for that. So.
Yay.
Unless you guys want to do it.
I vote
All
yes.
for that. Thank you, Marion.
Let me make a motion.
I make a motion to support Miriam in her volunteering for yet another committee.
I would second that.
Okay, David.
Aye.
DeFont abstain. Con.
Aye.
Wilson.
Aye.
Okay. All right. I think that's it.
All right.
Okay. It's 8:32. Somebody want to make a motion to adjourn?
And make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
Okay, David.
Aye.
DeFont, aye. Con.
Aye.
Wilson.
Aye.
Happy New Year,
Aye.
everybody.
Happy New Year.
Enjoy the rest of the time.
Thank you.
See you
Happy holidays.
see you next year.
Aye.
Bye.